I think there were several speakers that called to the public who spoke on this particular item. This is the value of federal lands and Resolution 2015-91. What's the pleasure of the board on this item?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Elias.
I'd like to move item 10, including resolution number 2015-91. I'll wait for a second to make any comments. Thank you.
Motion and a second. Supervisor Elias.
This is part of, well, I think one of the speakers said it well, that there's a small group of people who have created a narrative about the state controlling federal lands. And the truth is that the federal government has been good partners with us on the federal lands that we own here in Pima County and the state of Arizona. And it's our responsibility to continue being good stewards of those properties. This began in 1902 with the establishment of the Coronado National Forest. And we've done a good job. And we've done a good job with Saguaro National Park. And we've done a good job working together with the federal government to be stewards of this beautiful land that we have, that for 4,000 years we have evidence of people being here in this area. And hopefully we can continue to make it a beautiful place for 4,000 years into the future. And I think we need to really seriously continue to argue on behalf of that partnership and its strength and its overall well-being for the region. Arguments aside about it that become political in nature and frankly don't have much basis in reality continue to make me nervous, and I think that we need to pass this resolution today because it's the right thing to do for our future here in Arizona.
Thank you. Supervisor Carroll.
Madam Chair, my vote reflects the vote also of the Arizona County Supervisors Association. This has been brought up at the Arizona County Supervisors Association meetings last year, in fact, and this year. Again, it's a minority of people that are interested in doing this. I'm not sure what's going to happen at the state legislature, but I, for one, believe that it's not a perfect partnership and it's not going to be ever a perfect solution. But this is not the solution to change, to have the land be transferred to those state lands, especially during a time when the governor of Arizona is talking about putting state land out for auction bids. I think it's a slippery slope, and I agree that there are some dissatisfactions, but in the end, the federal government is there to protect and conserve the lands that they hold, and sometimes they're not following maybe community values or community decisions, but in this case, this is a drastic and dramatic change that's being sought, and I oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Valdez asked to be recognized first, and then we'll go to Supervisor Mayor.
Madam Chair, thank you. This is actually an idea or concept that I remember going back to my time in the Arizona legislature. And the real question that we need to ask ourselves in terms of the overall policy this represents, one of my colleagues talked about, this may not be a perfect system that we exist in, and I agree. But the truth is, we need to ask ourselves, why were these lands placed in the system that they're in? And number two, by doing this proposal, bringing those lands under state lands, is that purpose fulfilled, or is the job going to be done better? And the truth is that I don't know what the purpose of wanting to do this is, but I can tell you that it's not likely going to be done better, because frankly, you're adding to the amount of service that the state land department needs to provide, and frankly, there aren't the resources for this. So the real fundamental question is, again, what was the purpose that they were put in under these designations? And number two, is that purpose further fulfilled through this transference? And I might say that no and no. So I certainly am in support of this resolution, because I don't think it was a good idea then, and I don't think it's a good idea now.
Thank you, Supervisor Valdez. Supervisor Miller.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to note that about 42 to 43% of the land in Arizona is controlled by the federal government, and the purpose of our lands was to use for funding education. And if the state gets control of these lands, I don't agree that we should close the door for the state to actually take some control of these lands. I don't know if it's all of them, part of them, but closing the door, I think, is short-sighted. I think we need to keep the options open. And I would like to see, I've read the Property and Environmental Research Center study that was put out in March of 2015. The state government does a much better job of managing these lands than the federal government does. So if we get some of these lands, part of these lands, all of these lands, I'm not sure what the final answer will be, but I don't understand why anyone would want to close the door to that. And as a result of that, I'm going to disagree with this resolution. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Please.
No, I have a point of clarification.
Okay, Carol, go ahead, proceed.
I believe that I just heard that the federal lands were put under the protected status for the purpose of education. Is that correct?
That is what the state lands are used for, and getting some of these lands, if you look at the East Coast, their lands under federal protection are much lower percentage than the western states, and that getting part of these or all of these under the control of the state, I don't believe we should be closing the door on that.
All right, Madam Chair, because I thought I heard, and it could be my hearing, because I have a hearing issue, obviously, that these federal lands were put under that protected status for education. And I just wanted to make it very, very clear, those federal lands were not put under the protected status for education. That's state land.
It was for conservation and preservation earliest.
I was just going to comment that if the state legislature was really intent on fully funding education, or even starting to work on education and some of the road issues we have, they would call a special session and talk about that $1.5 billion surplus that they currently have and use it to fund our children this year, during this school year, instead of leaving them in the lurch.
Thank you, and I guess I'm going to weigh in on 2 points. I cannot agree with my colleague from District 1 that the state has done an excellent job of managing lands. In fact, they have not. The opposite is actually true. They simply, as Supervisor Valadez has already indicated, they are resource poor and they don't have the staffing or the funds to manage. And I think the other issue that none of my colleagues has mentioned yet, in terms of what the state legislature is trying to do, is I think we have some serious constitutionality issues related to this. And the last thing we need to do is spend taxpayer dollars in court defending either side of this equation. So for that reason, I'm going to support the resolution. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Supervisor Elias.
Well, I would like to just touch on that issue of constitutionality, and I'd ask Mr. Huckleberry to respond to that, because there are some timing issues related to that. And I think it's important that people here can understand the full impact of that. Mr. Huckleberry, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, the state of Arizona was created in 1912, and so you see many of these federal reservations occurring long before that creation. In the Enabling Act, they created the state trust, which was basically to provide for the beneficiaries, and the largest beneficiary is the educational system, the public educational system in Arizona. So I think any modification to, we'll say, the action of the legislature would ultimately require an act of Congress and a modification of the Enabling Act, and obviously would bring the judicial branch into the discussion fairly quickly. So I think our view is that we've looked at, like I say, the Coronado National Forest in 1902 was created. It was created, and that was when the forest was, and still is part of the Department of Agriculture. We know that Saguaro National Park East was actually created in 1873 as part of the Fort Dole Military Reservation, and part of also the Forest Service in their withdrawal in 1902. So we have all these predates association with federal withdrawals, And creating the state trust, the enabling act specifically specified which lands went into the trust for beneficial of beneficiaries, including public education. So to challenge that and change that is a monumental task and probably requires an act of Congress and probably litigation by the judicial branch of our government.
Thank you, Mr. Huckleberry. Any further discussion? Okay, I've called the question. Roll call.
Supervisor Carroll.
Aye.
Supervisor Elias.
Aye.
Supervisor Miller.
No.
Supervisor Valdez.
Aye.
Chair Johnson.
Aye, motion carries 4-1.